Hi, y'all. It's Brigitte Cutshall with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Chanda Coston. She is a business coach and strategist dedicated to helping women. Can you say hi, Chanda?
Hi.
I appreciate you being on and us connecting. She has a very intriguing background. She was actually in the military. I don't know how many years, but then she went to a corporate environment and she's now, my understanding, helping women start over to kind of, I'm assuming, build businesses in general.
Businesses that fit their life.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think it's our generation, we see a lot more people becoming entrepreneurs. And I think that is a scary thought. I've always wanted to own my own business, and I have for over a decade. And it has to do with a combination of a little bit of everything. I built trust. That's one thing you have to do.
For
Build
sure.
trust with your connections. I'm a military brat, and I wasn't in the military like you, but in a different way. And then I was in the corporate environment because I shouldn't say told, I was persuaded to go that route. And it was actually a very good experience. But I was a woman. And so I had lots of barriers. And I think my experience of being raised around the military helped me deal with it, become resilient. That's really what the podcast is about. So, what, I guess, prompted you, Chanda, to start coaching other women I'm assuming after you left the corporate environment, right?
Well, yes. Actually, it came after a major loss. Lost my brother to gun violence, and I started a nonprofit. And in that space is where I realized that I like mentoring and teaching in the community and coaching and being a resource. And so I went to seek that out. And as I mentioned before, I'm an empty nester. And so it was like, this is a perfect time to bet on me. And I started dabbling in the coaching space. And all of my peers, a lot of my peers, I won't say all of them, a lot of my peers would be like, oh my God, how do you get this stuff done? I want you to coach me. And so that like further piqued my curiosity and I kind of, jumped out there. So, but absolutely.
I like the word curiosity because that really helps us deal with issues that we're unexpectedly come across. I think my understanding on the women you kind of mostly deal with are like in their third phase of life, right? We are
Mhm.
adults and we usually, if we've had kids, we're empty nesters, which is a hard phase, as you know, growing up, being the child and getting married, having children, then they leave, and it's really emotional.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I chose that for several reasons. I think it's a really good fit with my personality, prior military, in the sense of I'm a kind of let's get it done type of person. And there is an urgency that comes with a woman who is later in life. So we speak the same language. You understand that you don't have all day, and I understand that we don't have all day. And so it's like, okay, how can we get this done? But I think the uniqueness of that is, and you hear it a lot actually now more than before, is stepping away from burnout in hustle mode into making something fit your life. And so when you think of entrepreneurship, people don't go into entrepreneurship for another job, right? But unfortunately, a lot of people do create more jobs. They go into it for all the freedoms. And it's like,
Right.
okay, how do I create freedom around the season of my life with the adult children and the grandchildren and the aging parents and, still want to have a
Oh,
life?
yeah. The word One word that stood out to me as you said burnout. We women, we tend to, I think, say yes too much. We want to help. It's in our nature to help. And we don't want to see someone, I shouldn't say hurt, but we just want to make them feel better. But then at the same time, we put ourselves in the background many times, I
Many
think.
times, for sure. And it's another thing I am really big on my clients with. The number one thing I hear them say to me is, I am so overwhelmed. The next thing I hear them say to me is, I don't have enough time. But the way that you fix those two is structure and boundaries, right? And self-care, which is another thing I speak highly on. Because, like you said, we're always the one that's pouring out, that's nurturing, who's giving often more than we have to give when there's nothing left for ourselves. And so when we get to this point, it's like, okay, I want this thing. I just don't see how I'm going to have this thing because I have all these other competing priorities. And it's getting them to understand like I'm worth it. I deserve to have this because I've taken care of the family. I've supported the spouse. I did college and corporate and all of those things. But what about me? And why not now?
I agree with that. With the boundaries, that's something I had to learn later because I wanted to I should say, please everybody. I mean, as a woman in the corporate
Yeah.
world, you understand that I didn't,
Yeah.
yeah, we just didn't want to look looked down upon, but I still was tougher than, I shouldn't say tougher. I'm grateful because I did stand up for myself and for other women, right? And I'm just grateful again for those experiences, role models that I've had, like my mother. And I joke that I have my husband was in the military too. I didn't marry him when he was in the military. I waited till he got out because I knew what it was like to have kids in that environment. Excuse me, my sinuses. But that's I joke that he's my bodyguard too. But because being around all these, I grew up, you and I probably the similar same age, but I grew up in the 70s and finished college and got married in the late 80s, and it was different. I hopefully the culture's a little bit better. I don't know. I was seen as being trustworthy, and I think that's probably what you want to help bring that out. And I think women seem to solve problems better. Is that the right word?
I agree with that. As far as being trustworthy, I think one of the things that every entrepreneur has to have is self-trust in order to kind of jump out there in that journey. But when you're in the coaching or consulting space, then you have to be seen as trustworthy so that they can trust your experience as well as your expertise and what you're going to deliver and how you're going to provide for them. I think that's the uniqueness of being a coach and a strategist. And so initially I was like, I'll just do strategy because everyone needs strategy. But once I began to work with people on a regular basis, most of my clients, they need the strategy, but they need the mindset like so much more.
Yeah.
There's a vulnerability that has to come with that for them to trust me, right? Not just with themselves and their dreams, but that whole process. And so I think that is so true. I definitely think some of that was nurtured through the military, but also in my corporate persona. Sure, sure. But grateful for the entire journey and how it played out, for sure.
I think it also has a lot to do with communication skills. I think a lot in general, you have obviously good communication skills from your experiences, and that helps build trust and helps people see you obviously a good listener because that is a critical part of communication rather than interrupting and telling people what to do. I think that's what turned me off. Excuse me, when I was in the military brat, I was always told what to do. And I never did anything bad. I was the calm one between
Yeah,
my older brother and younger sister. I mean, I probably wasn't that calm, but I'm saying calmed my older brother down and my younger sister down. And it's just something that's in me. But I knew when I graduated, I had to make sure I was okay. I knew that instinctively. Women have that, and some people blow that off, that instinct, right? Is that the right
yeah.
term?
I think you're spot on. I just think as we grow older, the more that we mute it in order to serve other people over ourselves, I think
Yeah.
that's the part that we lose. And I think that's the part that it's important to find. Definitely if you're stepping out into any large venture or dream at our age, right? Because at 21, we think we're invisible and we can do anything. But at 40, 50, 60, it just looks a little different, right? We're concerned about the risks and what ifs and
That's true. You know, we don't know how long we're going to be here, right?
sure.
I mean, I'm not trying to be negative. It's just, you just don't know. And that's why I agree with you. You mentioned about how important time is, and you want to use your time in the best way, especially in this as a woman, when you're a certain phase in your life. And yeah, I think our generation, I think you're Gen X, you're like me, I'm assuming, right? And we are taking care of older parents. And
Mhm.
then, or at least thankfully, our children are adults, but they still kind of need us right? They still need us as an anchor. Is that the right
For
word?
sure.
Anchors. And I don't know, it's a tough thing. And I think we do need, the first step is to take care of ourselves first. That's my perspective and my experiences, is make time for yourself, not just everybody else. I'm not sure what you do because you were in the military, where you were in the Navy. Was
Was in the Navy.
So I'm sure you learned about how important it was for movement
Yeah.
to be active. That is something that still like to do. I don't run every day, but I like to run and walk and I just because it's something I was raised around, and it helps me mentally to I should say calm down. You know what I'm saying? When you have a problem,
Mhm.
sometimes you have to pause, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And think about the next steps. So I'm sure that I'm assuming you do most of your stuff online, or is it in person for your
It's
coaching?
online. Yeah.
That's good. That is a lot of people. love Zoom, by the way. I'm assuming you use Zoom.
That is one of my systems.
Right, it mentions the you mentioned also too the strategy part. That is something that when I was younger, I wouldn't be afraid to throw I call it throwing things at a wall and see if it sticks. But that long term, that's okay to test things out, right? But you still have to have a strategy.
Mhm.
And that is something that people are afraid to do. They have these ideas and you're probably helping them get to the next step, right? How long are do the coaching sessions last? I'm assuming months or
Yeah, 3 months is the 12-week program, but we go through the entirety of your business. If I have an intro offer that's 3 days, where you meet with me over 3 days and we solve one problem in your business.
oh wow.
Yeah, for sure. Uh,
Depends on what they're needing, right?
yeah, well, because there's billions of people in the world, people are like, Who are you? What do you do?" And I think in this day and age, there's a lack of integrity in the space. And I've had good coaches and bad coaches, so I can speak to that also. And like you said, you'll go, at least I've gone into a program and they're like, they're promising me the world and they throw spaghetti at the wall and I walk away from it and I'm like, what is this? Like, what did I just pay
Right.
for? And so my program is more structured because I think the benefit of a strategist is clarity, right? And direction. So that's what that looks like though. You walk away with a very high level plan if you do the 12-week program for 12 months where you can actually execute everything that will make your business a success.
It also gives you some fuel, right? The strategy helps give you the
Yeah.
fuel and you probably help. You're not inspiring them, Chanda. I think you're motivating them as well, right? To go take the next step. And do people come to you prior to opening a business or and then they get your feedback on that maybe?
They come to me in all phases. Some come to me not just having a book of ideas and they're trying to figure out which one to launch and how to do that. And so we dive into that and get clear and then come up with a plan and strategy that best fits their life for where they are. All their agreement, all their idea. And then I have some who say they're making money, they're just not making consistent money and they're trying to figure out what's broken. And so we look at their systems and figure out, okay, what do we need to refine so they can be positioned to actually scale and make money consistently. And then you have people who are making money and they're just like, okay, I want to make more money. And how do I do that? It's like, are you pivoting into another space and adding that in your business? Or are you going to, do something larger without requiring more time? Right. And so it really depends.
Can you give me like one example? You don't have to say their name, like somebody that you helped, an example, and then they got through the other side.
Oh, I have lots and lots of examples.
Yeah, like, but just whatever first comes to mind. You don't have to say their names, but I'm just curious as an example of what you've dealt with.
I'm sure. I had a young lady who was working in an industry and they shut the industry down and she wanted to pivot and she was working for a company and she was making okay money, but she wanted to do it for herself. And she was like, okay, well, how do I do this without conflicting? And I said, well, you just basically alert everybody that you're launching. And she's like, I hadn't thought of it as a launch. I was like, well, you've never had the business before. You've just been doing the job. And so technically, no one knows that you're offering the service, right? But little aha moments like that, little breakthroughs. So sometimes people are holding something so close that they haven't opened up enough that it can breathe, right? So that they can explore it, right? Because that's that curiosity again. And so I really just give people the comfortability, not just to talk about it, but I give them permission to bring it to life. So I always say, what does that look like? You say, I want to do this thing. Okay, well, tell me, what does that look like? You
Right.
know? And so we're gradually pulling this thread until we actually paint a picture. And I say, okay, well, let's figure out how we're going to do that. And so that's a part of the conversation. But if you don't give yourself permission to talk about the thing, to imagine the thing, right? It just stays hidden. It just stays buried. And we deserve that for sure.
Right, we need to be seen, and I started my example, mine from a corporate layoff from, but it was a private equity firm. That's what's going on. That's why I was kind of mentioning what you're doing is important. And I was totally not expecting that. And I was not just me, it was a lot of us. It's the industries are changing. And then I got cancer again. I'm like, crap. I
Sorry.
was looking for a job. So sorry, my sinuses. I'll get that out. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, I got to focus on my health. And then I had some clients, they learned what happened. And they're like, we trust you. So they're helping me. That gave me some confidence. Like, you're still here. You're important. We need you. And I think that helped me a lot because that helped me get through all this stuff. I joke about, I'm not I'm resilient, right? I also have a lot of tolerance for stuff, and I shouldn't say tolerance, but I did create some boundaries after that. Then I'm like, why am I looking for a job? Right? Because that's what we were told to do when we were
Right.
younger. And so I've been doing this on my own for over 15 years, and not the podcast, but I meant my business. And I like, wow, because we don't see the value in ourselves. And I
Gotcha.
think that's my example. I didn't see my value. I just thought I was just, some representing some other company. And I think that was a good thing for me. And my family was like, whoa, but they saw it made me happy. Right. I think at the end of the day, you want to have some joy, right?
Well, like, what else is it? One of my other favorite sayings is YOLO, right? You only live once. So what are we waiting for? Like, we're waiting to live. Life is passing us by.
There is so much noise out there. I guess, what is your perspective to help get, like you mentioned, the word launch? Um, is it social media is changing so much too? That's kind of what it's just, I try not to, I don't watch the news, but I do like read to see what's going on.
I'm the same way.
Interpret it differently when I'm reading than watching someone say it. So what is your perspective on helping launch something?
Really depends on the industry it's in. But in this day and age, I think everyone needs a personal brand. And so that is a component of my program. You don't need a personal brand in corporate, right? Because you are covered or masked by that company. And so it doesn't matter if you're Joe Schmo, but when you step outside of that and say, here I am, and this is what I do, then people want to trust your brand to know that they can trust you. And so, I mean, there's lots of ways to launch. You can do partnerships and collaborations. You can do JVs, joint ventures. You can also do networking events. You can hold events. You can do info webinars, or you can do webinars that teach something in your field. You solve a problem per se that everyone has, and people come on to hear what you have to say, and then you can pitch them from there or bring them into your ecosystem. And then there is always social media or things like this, podcasting, being a guest or
Right.
hosting one.
I think podcasting is a great way to get your voice out there, right? Or I should say your voice, but your name and your brand. And I started my podcast to middle of 2019. I know Seth Godin, and I joke that it's his fault. I'm just kidding. No, he was saying this is a really good thing to do, and not just me, but so I was a part of I should say guinea pig, a beta group of people. We were like listening, learning how to launch a podcast because it didn't have to be perfect. Because I had this issue, Chanda, sometimes I won't do it if it's not perfect, right? And so I've learned it's okay to put it out there, and it's helped a lot, bring a lot of voices out there to help people get their message out
Mhm.
there. And traditional media is really, really difficult to get on. So it's about being consistent too. You just got to be consistent with your messaging. My background is part of communications and publishing, but again, I was back in the day representing corporate, and I was their face, right? I shouldn't say face, but that's probably why they put me up there, because I was the girl. I wasn't the guy. It's how it is.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm so okay with that. But it's a great way to, I don't know I think YouTube is really, really become really popular. I read an article that it's gonna become like TV, the regular YouTube. And I recommend people to get a channel. You know what I'm saying? It's part of the brand. That's just I mean, it takes some work, but I meant all the social media platforms change a lot, but then you have to have your website, I'm assuming, right? You would recommend that. Yeah, I agree with you on the branding yourself, but I was like, scared to do a YouTube channel, and I don't know why, because again, I'm like, oh gosh. And but I had some friends who were in the space who recommended I do it. And that's why it helps to get some coaching like what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
And I did pay to be part of a group, Seth Godin stuff. All MBA is what it is. And I went down that route because I wanted to be part of a group, you know what I'm saying, to do this. And that was kind of what helped me grow my business, is getting feedback from these people. It was just a great environment. And it was worth it, guys. If it is worth investing in yourself, right?
For sure.
That's kind of what I'm saying. And getting a coach, the only kind of coach experience I have is more like running. I'm a run coach for the Atlanta Track Club, that kind of. But on the business side, I'm more of a cheerleader. Is that the right word?
And that's okay. We need those too. I
Cheers.
think that comes in community. And I tell everyone that I think accountability is so key when you're trying to build something. So statistically speaking, if you tell someone about a goal, you're 65% more likely to achieve that
Yeah.
goal. And then if you have someone keeping you accountable on a regular basis, you increase your percentage by like 95%. And so just having a spouse, a friend, or a community, or a coach, or a mentor, someone who's checking in with you on a regular basis, like, hey, I want to do this thing by this date. Can you keep me accountable? And like they're holding you to it, like, hey, what's going on with that thing? You told me you're gonna do this, like where you are, you with that. It just changes the dynamic of how we execute. As humans, we want to show up for people more than we want to show up for ourselves. And so we will be like, oh, wow, I got to have an update for them. So let me get going, right? But in community, we got you, who was a cheerleader, saying, let's get it, let's go. Like,
Right.
you can do this. And I think that's so important. And people need that. You'd be surprised how many people say they don't have that. And I think that is so key.
I also think what you're doing, that the coaching aspect, I think is better than these courses that are out there. You know what I'm saying? Because it's static. It's not, you're not really, you might be messaging each other, but you're not actually having a conversation.
Yeah,
I think to me that human connection that you are creating will help motivate people
for
to
sure.
make and give them some value because they're talking to you, especially with this popped into my mind. Sorry, this AI stuff going on. People say they talk to AI, whatever, but I mean, I've asked it questions and helped summarize things, and I say thank you, and I'm nice to it. You just don't know, right? But I'm polite. But I think AI. I'm not afraid of it. We just got to learn how to use it properly.
Yeah.
And we need the humans involved, and I think that's what you're doing. And a business shouldn't say business minded person, they do need support. Doesn't matter how many years of business experience they have. I think you have to pivot a lot these days because of the constant, right? And that's kind of what I started this podcast is resilience because of all these changes people are overwhelmed and upset about. But change has always been here, right? I read an analogy about nature. Nature is very resilient because it changes every season. And that's what you're doing, China. It makes me think of connecting you. I see your little flower behind you or plant behind you on your wall. And I have them here too because nature is, we need to respect that and
Yeah.
respect each other and respect yourself,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is very key. I think the benefit of having someone you meet with on a weekly basis when you're in a program, I think it's okay to have a course, but you need to talk to someone about what you're learning in the course.
Yes.
And the thing with human connection is we can bounce ideas off of each other and you can have breakthroughs and aha moments that I won't say I don't know if you'll get them with AI. But I think there's just something about, talking it over with another person. And so as we go through your business and you're saying, this is what I'm struggling with, it's going to be a much more sincere, intimate conversation, relatable conversation, because then I can tell you, this has been my experience when I did that thing, and this is what I learned, and this is how you leverage my experience. And by the way, here are some resources I used, or this is what I know. And I just think it's so important to have. And so absolutely, I agree with you on that. I think people get so wrapped up with AI. I think you need to see it as a tool,
Yeah.
right? And so it's okay to help it leverage for time wise, but you should by no means rely on it as like a body of work or right.
You still need to think.
For
That's
sure.
important. And I think the human conversation that you have, you're making your other person, whatever your client, whatever you want to call them, you're making them like actually think about how to answer rather than
Mhm.
you're not telling them what to do. You're asking them the right questions and you're listening, and then you'll give feedback when they're ready. I'm assuming. Yeah, that's kind of how I see a coach. And because back in the day, when you think of coaches, you think of sports coaches, right? And they're hard on you, but that's not what it is, guys. We really need to support each other and love each other or really and value each other. That's how I see it. So what is my last question? One takeaway for the listeners that you want to have based on what you're providing in your experience? We'll try to narrow it down to one or two.
Takeaway, I guess we go back to two takeaways is you're more valuable than you know. All of your experiences do count and they'll make you better in the end. And so don't see it as a failure, see it as a tool, a lesson learned, and you are human capital, meaning you are worth so much. And the only way you ever know how much you're worth is if you work for yourself, because no one will ever pay you your worth. The other thing I go back to is YOLO. Like, seriously, people, we only live once. And the way this world is going, we do not know what tomorrow will bring. And so live fully today. Fully today.
I like
There we
that.
go.
We have to embrace it while you're here today and appreciate everything around you. I like the mindfulness thing you mentioned too. You need to be mindful of this and just have gratitude for what you have and don't focus on negative things. I like the positive aspect. You have to, acknowledge things, but then to help me move forward and probably for you as well, focus on the positive of the day. Have fun. Try to fit in a little few minutes each day. It doesn't have to be hours. So where can people reach out and connect with you or learn more about you, Chanda?
My website is chanda-co.com. And then my socials is chanda 2_co. And I'd
Okay.
love to connect.
And for those that are listening, I'll include the link she mentioned in the description. So if you're driving, be safe, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Chanda.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.